My name is Richmond Egyei, and I present our poster titled Immigration Stocks and Flow, APS and Electoral Register Data. This is a joint work with Augustin De Colon and Jonathan Watworth. In our study, we explore whether an alternative source of information regarding local area immigration population from the Electoral Roll Register could help improve the accuracy and reliability of published local area migration figures in the UK. Currently, there is no known immigration register in the UK, unlike in many other developed countries. For instance, other EU countries require their EU citizens to register with local authorities, and this enabled them to hold national counts of stocks. The stocks are measured often at short intervals of time, monthly, quarterly, and thus allowing for a regular assessment of the number of migrants entering and leaving the country. To the best of our knowledge, the ER data has not been used in this way before. In our study, because of constraints, we use nationality to measure immigration rather than those born abroad. And that's not an attempt to bring a new definition. Note that the UN consider migrants as those born abroad who have been living for at least 12 months in the host country. We focus on identifying similarities between migration estimates from the Annual Population Survey, the APS, the census, and the Electoral Register. The Electoral Register, which is sometimes referred to as Electoral Roll, is collected by a local authority and is intended to be a list of everyone who is eligible to vote in each local authority. It is compulsory to register to vote, and local authorities have statutory duty to compile, maintain, and update the list on a yearly basis. The roll should therefore be a count of resident population aged 16 years and above. Respondents have legal requirement to record their nationality since this affects their eligibility to vote in different elections. Penalty for failing to report is £1,000. We focus on European Union immigrants in England and Wales. We use the fact that EU citizens can vote in local election, but not in general election. Therefore, the difference between the two electors gives us the EU citizens. That is minus Irish, Cypriots, and Maltese. We employ descriptive statistics as well as regression to compare the EU immigrant estimates from APS, census, and ER. We estimate a panel fixed effects regression to quantify the extent to which ER count and APS estimates move in tandem. So where do we start? Let's start with the graphs, the two graphs, the first two sets of graphs. These graphs shows the difference between the two registers, that is local election register and then general election register. And it gives us the idea of EU immigrants aged 18 years and above living in the UK. The second set of graphs, which is compares the estimates that is from the Electoral Roll Register and equivalent estimates from APS. These two graphs, we see that they show similar trends, confirming the long-term rise in the EU population over this period. However, while both curves show an upward trend until 2013, the ER derived count falls in 2014 and rises again after 2015, and the APS count rises throughout the period. In order to find out how the stocks of EU immigrants have been growing over time across the two series, we compare the growth rates of the respective series, and which you can find in the third set of graphs. Consistent with the level graphs, we find in the growth rate graphs, that's an example for England as depicted, we find that the ER and the APS curves depict a similar growth pattern. However, in 2014, we find a negative growth rate for ER and a positive growth rate for APS. In Wales, we find the two curves showing a similar growth pattern for EU immigrants for much of the sample. In both graphs, we see that the curves spike at the beginning of the sample period, which could be attributed to the decision by the UK government to allow citizens of A8 countries free movement in 2004, which we think more work could be done in this area. The aggregate analysis indicate that the two series align until 2014 nationally, but diverges somewhat thereafter. How about the local area counts? What do? We start by comparing the 2011 counts of EU citizens at the local authority level, as derived from the year, and compares it with its equivalent APS and census count. We assume that the EU derived count from the census is the true count of EU citizens. We first discuss the distribution of EU citizens across the local authority. A common characteristic of immigrant settlement pattern is geographic concentration. Immigrants from a given country of origin tend to live in areas where others from the same origin live. Immigrants, after spending an initial period living with established contacts, appears more likely to move to other new locations. To capture this, we employ inequality measures. Inequalities measures are mostly used by economists to study differences in how assets, wealth, and income are distributed among individuals or population. Our goal in this study is different. We use the same indicator to document the extent of and the changes in the geographic dispersion of EU immigrants population. Using census as the benchmark, we find the inequality measures suggest more unequal geographic dispersion of EU population for all the three data sets. However, the ER estimates appear much closer to the census than the APS. The APS generally estimates a more unequal geographic dispersion of the EU population than other two datasets. Another way to assess the degree of correspondence between APS and ER count is to estimate a simple regression of the form APS equals to alpha plus beta ER. If the population counts in the two datasets in area I at time t are the same, we would expect that the estimated coefficients from a simple two variable regression to be 0 on the intercept and unity on the slope. A negative intercept would suggest that APS underestimate the counts in the reference local authority in the first period of time. An estimated slope coefficient greater than 1 will suggest that at some point, at some size point, the APS eventually tend to overestimate the EU count beyond a particular population threshold. Since the data are pooled across years, we can control for any macro change in the APS counting regime by adding year damage to the regression. The addition of the local authority fixed effects effectively estimate the correspondence in the average change in the EU population count in the two surveys. We also test for the structural break, which we think happened in 2014 as a result in the change in electoral register. In the second model, what we try to do is we try to understand the differences in the local authority fixed effect. And we find that the age structure, the population, and the share of UK born significantly explain the heterogeneity in LA specific fixed effect. We conclude by saying that ER appears to offer a complementary and useful information on regional figures and trend, and therefore we think it should be considered. Thank you.